This is The Pulse, and I'm Philip Swicegood. The United Way of Central Georgia is the de facto leader in fighting poverty in the Middle Georgia area. And so whenever we hear about someone else in the Middle Georgia area doing the same thing, we want to have a conversation with them to hear what they are doing. Joining us today is Will Johnston from the MicroLife Institute to talk to us about how housing can work for everyone. We're super excited about this conversation. Will, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
So Will, you're with the MicroLife Institute. Talk to me for a second about the philosophy behind that.
So the MicroLife Institute was, I founded it about 9 years ago, and it really focuses on utilizing space. We don't utilize space that well in the United States. We like to expand. And my idea is saying, you know what, all right, let's look at our communities, let's look at walkability, connectivity, and let's reweave that social fabric back together, utilizing better built environments.
So Will, we appreciate you being here, and I happen to know that you live in a micro space, and obviously I think right out of the gate people see that you're passionate about it. But why are you so passionate about living in the micro spaces? And define when someone out there hears the term, micro living or tiny homes, exactly how do you define that?
Well, I'll start with that one. So there's multiple definitions out there. So I kind of want to make sure people understand how we as MicroLife defines micro spaces as well as tiny houses. Tiny houses in the state of Georgia are 400 square feet or smaller on a foundation. So the actual bricks and mortar attached to the ground. Now, you see those TV shows, any tiny house that's built on a wheel-based chassis, that is actually considered a recreational vehicle. So it comes back to the policy. So we need to make sure that if people want to live in a tiny house on wheels, they need to live full-time in an RV park or a mobile home park zoned area. So again, those terms also have some heavy stigma behind them, and a lot of municipalities and governments will never, ever, ever allow for an RV park to be zoned in an area in their community ever again. So how do we use better policy to redefine what a tiny house on wheel can be in the community, because they are meant to be lived in 365 days a year. Now, micro living for us as MicroLife Institute, we think that is 1,000 square feet or smaller, and yes, still more on the foundation built process. So my house was stick built. We built 8 houses, all on 0.57 acres, all under 500 square feet. Quality, not quantity, again. So the idea is to show that your life can flourish. That's what we need to show. We need homes, not housing. So the idea of actually providing better quality homes on a smaller footprint allows people to flourish. I always ask this question, who would you be if you didn't have to spend most of your money on your mortgage? You look at our culture right now, they say 30% of your income goes to housing. But that's not true. Add in the car culture, and you're looking at 50% of your income has to go to living expenses. That's living and driving, just to maintain your life. So what if we allowed for housing being built closer to your job? What if we allowed for better housing options to be built in the downtown area? Form-based code, not necessarily just based code that says this structure has to only have this purpose. Form-based code says this building needs to be maintained, but it could be a condo, it could be a live-work situation. It allows us to be a lot more flexible with what we can do with downtown areas.
Well, I want to go off scripture for a second, because you said something that I think hits home, and it is that 50% of the average person's income is spent either on transportation or on housing. And that I think your like average mortgage now is pushing $2,000 a month. Your average new car payment is $700 a month. It's actually $712.
Oh my
gosh. It's insane what your average median American family is going to be spending on these things. The question that I have for you though, someone that's living in a micro house, do you ever feel like that you're missing out on something by living in a space like that?
I mean, I would say, I throw that question right back at you at your house. I mean, there's always going to be something you're like, you know what, I wish I had this, or I wish I had that. But the idea of saying, you know what, this is the finite space that I live in, and it's saying, like, for me, I kind of do a one in, one out mentality right now. Like, there's only 500 square feet, and that's all I can fill. So if I buy something big, something else has got to go. It's the idea of kind of teaching yourself minimalism as well as, being happy with what you have. Not necessarily always feeling that, quote unquote, you always say you're filling the hole that will never ever be filled. And so the idea of showing that you can have a high quality of life in a smaller footprint, but also if you're ready for a change, then change. The average American moves every 7 years, but within how we built the cottage court or the cottages on Vaughn in Clarkston, pocket neighborhoods a la cottage courts, you see an average time span to live in that is 10 to 12 years. Because again, you're not just buying a home, you're buying into a community. The idea of designing and allowing your home to interact differently with another person is what we're focused on. Because if you provide almost, I don't want to say forced, but encouraged human interaction where you have the cars off to the side, you have to walk in front of each home. Front porches are mandatory and a certain size, so you have to utilize them. It's the idea of, again, being human. I'm not saying you need to be best friends, but if you're standing on your front porch and I see you, I'm going to say, hey, how are you? So it's those moments that also are fighting against the loneliness epidemic that is happening. That I think we saw a report that being by yourself is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So that is a huge issue in the boomer generation. So a lot of people don't realize the way we have built for the past 50 years, suburbia, if you will, the garage facing the street where you just drive in, shut your door, and not interact is really unhealthy.
So Will, on the same thing, talk a little bit about housing policy in most communities. My understanding is, for some reason to build 1,000 or a 750 square foot home or to build a village like you did, that you just can't go into.
It's illegal.
Yeah. And why is that? And what is the policy? And how effective or how successful have you been getting them changed?
So one of the things that MicroLife is doing is just helping people be educated. So there's a great, I wouldn't say great because again, people have to upload their zoning code to it, but it's called MuniCode. And MuniCode Online allows you to kind of dig a little deeper and understand what you can build because your lot is designated as R1 residential, yada, yada, yada. So you need to figure out what your lot is because it's already be predetermined by the Planning and Zoning Department. We kind of, back in the, after World War II, we just carte blanche just accepted that this was zoning now, and suburban zoning just spread across the United States. And it was saying that, it was suburban zoning mixed with the American dream, meaning large house or a house with a picket fence, 2-car garage. So that zoning dominated the area. Atlanta, I believe, is like 69 to 72% single family zoning.
Wow.
Atlanta, a city that needs walkable, connected spaces, and yet people are fighting tooth and nail now because as density happens, they don't want it. So you can imagine as we talk to rural communities of Middle Georgia, so how do we allow for those downtown areas, like Danville, Dublin, Macon, how do you allow for more thoughtful density to happen in a strategic fashion that supports, again, looking at your comprehensive plans. You all have comprehensive plans, and it is a wish. Everyone is wishing for this utopia of walkability, connectivity, and our zoning doesn't allow you to do most of it. So that's the disconnect we need to bring back to focus and say, hey, we do need to create better ways for our downtowns to survive. Everyone says they want that new coffee shop or restaurant, but it's not supported if there's not the households, the rooftops, to be able to walk to and support it. So, everything is attached. You talk to then we can go into schools, we can go into transportation. But when you start with housing, people don't realize the definition of housing is not a single family home. Like, it is a place, well, actually, I'm not going to go into it. Like, I think everyone has their own definition of what housing is. But at the end of the day, for me, living in my 500 square foot house, I'm paying $900 a month for a brand new construction. Not many people can say they spend $900 a month on their mortgage. And I'm lucky enough that, again, our culture has kind of shifted with the pandemic. We can work from home. So we're finding ways to save money, but yet housing prices go up, housing costs go up, housing materials, the pipeline of getting materials to build has all disrupted the cost. And so how do we take a model like what we built in Clarkston and apply it to Macon or apply it to Middle Georgia? And again, it's shrinking the footprint of the home. I'm not saying live in the smallest space possible, but I need people to understand that there's opportunity in shrinking your footprint.
So George, talk to us about the relationship that United Way has with the MicroLife Institute and how you guys are collaborating.
Yeah, I mean, until a month ago, I had never seen, I'd then put boots on the ground in a micro home, and I'd known several people that lived in them. And then a mutual business associate that we both know that works with us, we were talking about some of the solutions for homelessness. I mean, one of the big challenges with homelessness is, as Will mentioned earlier, there's a lack of affordable housing. And so we connected, would it be possible that these micro homes could be a potential solution? Right now in Bibb County, we have way too many families that are living in hotel rooms. I've heard stories, a mother and 2, 3, 4, or 5 children, live in a pay-by-the-week motel room. They're building no wealth. They're subject to who else is in the motel and things like that. And so we were looking at a possible partnership here where we could bring and build some of these villages where we could house those folks. There's facilities where veterans are living. Same deal, they're living in a pay-by-the-week type environment. Well, could we get these veterans into a micro home where, not only would they have a space, but they would own it? One of the misconceptions when people hear homelessness too is they think, well, homelessness means you have no money. Well, that's not really true. A lot of the homeless, especially the transitional that we deal with, they have income. It's just, right now, the barrier, to get an apartment where you got to put in a down payment, a month's rent, and this and that, is nowhere near as affordable as some of the things that we're talking about with Will. So, yeah, I mean, we are definitely exploring, seeing if this is, just one option. So it's an exciting thing to look into. And I'll echo Will. If you're the least bit interested in this topic, find out about this Tiny Home Festival down in Danville and go down and
see it to believe it.
See it to believe it.
Will, anything else you want to add to before we wrap this up?
I would just say, again, I'm going to echo George, come to the Tiny House Festival because it will be fun. It is going to be a big old good time. Think Fall Fest meets Tiny House Fest because we've got everything from petting zoos to axe throwing to also tiny houses. And we've got Zach Giffen coming from Tiny House Nation. He's going to be our keynote and hang out with us all week.
Hey, Will, I want to come to the Tiny Home Festival. How do I find out where it is or find out about it?
I'll tell you, George. You can go to tinyhousefestival.com and you can learn all about all the fun stuff we're going to have that weekend. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And you can also go to Hummingbird Tiny Houses if you want to stay in a tiny house before the festival. So Hummingbird Tiny Home Rentals is an amazing, and it is the farm where we're going to have it in Danville, Georgia. Like I said, a quick 30 minutes east of Macon.
And to be fair, it's not just going down and going through tiny homes. There's other activities, right?
Yes, I mean, they have built quite the resort. I would say a tiny house resort out there to play, do, and enjoy. And then also, I'm really, again, I grew up in rural West Virginia, so seeing the rural entrepreneurship come through Hummingbird, as well as what's going in Dublin, Macon, Danville. Like, all of these people are inventing themselves or reinventing themselves. I mean, you've got Jail Creek Winery out there in Jeffersonville. I mean, there is stuff to do, and I love the fact that the community is supporting this festival as well as supporting each other.
And what's the website again?
tinyhousefestival.com.
There you go.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you guys for watching this episode of The Pulse, and see where George and I go next.